So today we are going to talk about rural biotech. Two things you don't often hear in the same sentence. Last year, Radically Rural's parent organization, the Hannah Grimes Center for Entrepreneurship, received funding from the SBA to bolster our support of biotech businesses. And one outcome of that work is the Radically Rural Biotech Network. We talk a lot about how rural communities are oftentimes known for extraction to some extent, and we claim that rural communities are also generative, and this is one of the ways that we have an opportunity to do that. So I am going to pass it over to our facilitators for today, Angela Snow and Alison Chisolm. They are consultants that work with the Hannah Grimes Center on this project, and I am very much looking forward to what they have to say. They will have the rest of the hour, and I know that they've built in lots of conversation time, so I will kick it off to them. Thanks so much for being here, everyone.
Hello, everyone. As Alison unmutes, I will say hello
Thank
first.
you. Thank you, Angela. So, hello. We are so glad you are here with us today. We would love to know a little bit about you. We're going to tell you a little bit about ourselves first. And while we're doing that, if you could put your name, your organization, and your location in the chat, we'd love to see that. My name is Alison Chisolm. I work with the Hannah Grimes Center for Entrepreneurship on a variety of programs and projects, but I, along with Angela Snow, am owning the Radically Rural Biotech Project. So I will let Angela introduce herself.
Hello, I'm Angela Snow, as Alison said, working with Hannah Grimes Center on spearheading and creating and developing this national rural biotech network.
So now that you've had a chance, okay, you guys get those fingers out. I see that we've only got 7 people in the chat right now. Thank you. It's coming in. It's the afternoon slowdown. We are also going to do a little poll here to see a little bit about the type of organization you are and the services you provide. I think Lily's going to put that poll up on the screen now. And I will say, oh, you can have multiple checks. So if you have multiple things or none of the above. Lily, have we got?
We've got 13 responses, a few more rolling in.
Excellent. Okay, Beatrice Wins works from Arkansas for a Bay Area biotech. That's very funny. There you go. Rural and urban all together.
Alrighty, and I'll go ahead and project the results up here.
Thank you. Okay, this is really exciting. We've got a nice combination, and we've even got the people that came for particular interests that don't align to what we expected might be the reasons that you're here. But I do see that the reasons that most of you are here, the organizations that you're mostly here representing, have a strong overlap with what we're about to talk about. So I think you're going to find this an interesting and productive conversation and have a lot to add. And I'm guessing that the 8% that are none of the above, you will have even the most interesting things to add because you will have offered something completely different to this conversation. So with that, let us move on to what we know and understand about the biotech world. First of all, we think that biotech is a sector for the 21st century. And it's an interesting sector because it draws on sectors that have preceded it in earlier times. So there's biotech manufacturing, there is biotech ag. There are lots of kinds of things that biotech is now the new frontier for some industries and sectors that have been around for a very long time. If you doubt how important biotech is to the US economy, the total economic impact for the domestic biosciences sector, that's not even counting in like foreign biosciences, $2.86 trillion. That is in part because biotech is such an enormous umbrella for a lot of different subsectors. And so you see the 5 most common subsectors. And when we're talking about rural biotech, we also see some enabling sectors that are not even listed here. So you have a sense of the broad reach of biotech and why we think that rural communities can and should be a part of it, because it is hard to believe that rural communities don't have something to offer across this very serious sector of our economy. But here's the reality. 1 in 4 Americans live in rural communities, but biotech is concentrated in just 5 urban hubs. That means that biotech is not an industry that is distributed equitably across the United States economy. And we think that that has profound implications for the rural communities in which we live or serve or work or all of the above. So we started thinking about what was a possible solution to this and started thinking about what really makes urban hubs tick. And we decided that it was a density and connection, a density of expertise and resources and connections to a network. And we went, oh, we know how to make that work. That's something called radically rural. We can create density of resources and expertise across space and time through a network. And technology, of course, is a great enabler and great leveler for all of that. We also believe that those connections can be built that are meaningful, that you do not have to be next door to each other to have a meaningful connection with an expert in another rural community or another organization, or learn from a solution or model that is working in another rural community. So we put this idea into a proposal for the Growth Accelerator Fund competition run by SBA in partnership with the American Seed Fund, and were named a GAFC Award winner in 2023. There was a 2-phase award process, and we were named a winner in both phases. And our work through that grant, or it's really an award, so I used the grant, but it's an award, was to establish radically rural biotech and use the funding to make that happen. This radically rural biotech, if you can see from the picture, the idea of it is a network with 5 founding organizations. We're going to tell you a little bit more about those. And then these kind of blue-gray circles are new partners and organizations to be identified. And each of them, we're calling this a network of networks, because each of these organizations brings their own network and resources to the rural biotech ecosystem. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Angela Snow.
Yeah, so kind of the beginning of all this, as Alison said, started with the SBA's GAFC fund. And with the phase 1, we were tasked with finding some partners, which ended up being a great instigator to do what we wanted to do anyway. And some good news is we found that there were partners that made sense to be involved with, and we're excited to be involved in the network. And so that was our first kind of test of this makes sense to us and to other people. So in 2023 at the Radically Rural Summit in Keene, our first founding partners, 5 total, but that includes us, Hannah Grimes, it's the Catalyst, got together for an in-person meeting at the summit and have been meeting monthly since then, both working in a collaborative way as the network is planned to, as well as figuring out and developing and evolving this network. Those founding partners include Durago Labs in Maine, and KY Inventors in Kentucky, Ohio Innovation Center as part of Ohio University, and New Mexico Bioscience Authority in New Mexico. And one of the things that we are discovering as a benefit, and just the reality of it, is that all ESOs and all of these founding partners and people that organizations we're continuing to talk with have different models, which just means we have a lot of things in common and a lot of things to compare and learn from each other. Durgo Labs has a public-private partnership. Ohio Innovation Center is university connected, and nonprofit ESO, more model like Hannah Grimes and Kentucky Inventors. And we've been, as I said, meeting monthly, and kind of one of the things that has come about is having in-practice discussions about entrepreneurs that we're supporting, and be kicking off that sharing of resources that we imagine this. And that has been one evolution of this network, that how we're sharing those resources has landed as far as working and feeling good to the partners and beneficial. And next slide. So up next is part of the GAFC phase 2 is expanding from those 5 founding partners to additional partners. And we've said we would bring on 10 new partners starting. So that would again start at the Radically Rural Summit this year in 2024 in September in Keene. And this year the summit's also going to have a biotech tract, which won't just be for biotech people, but with that spin on it. And the founding partners and new partners will meet there. And as I'm doing this outreach and looking for new partners, and hopefully hearing from people that might be interested that I haven't just Googled and found, would love to hear from you, is when we're looking at this, is who might be a part of the network. We start with rural. So either located in a rural community or state, or if, for instance, New Mexico Bioscience Authority isn't located in a tiny town, but New Mexico as a whole is very rural, and the priority of New Mexico Bioscience Authority is serving rural entrepreneurs. So rural is kind of the top tier, and then the other top tier is biotech related. So supporting rural biotech entrepreneurs. And thereby developing rural biotech sectors. So some interest, so currently supporting and interest in growing that in the future within your community, whatever that range may be. And then really we've been talking a lot about what this network is made up of, and we're really focusing on these next additional partners as being like-minded ESOs, this network of networks. And we know that there's a lot of kind of players in the biotech ecosystem that will be a part of this network. We're kind of growing in a focused way so that the kind of quality over quantity can be focused, and we can figure out how everyone plays together. So we're aware that there's lots of players in the ecosystem, kind of what will become resources and affiliate partners. But this next wave that we're really concentrating on of additional partners are ESOs. So they offer a range of services to entrepreneurs, such as training and mentorship programs, capital access program, including SBIR, STTR assistance, networking and ecosystem building programs, and space, such as co-working, like Hannah Grimes' office offers, wet labs and such. And then the network is meant to be collaborative. Willing to share experiences, expertise, and resources. We're working towards an online platform where resources will be shared, as well as, in addition to these virtual, not in-person conversations, but virtual, real, in-the-moment conversations of sharing of resources. And so that ability to share contacts, to share recommendations of a consultant or a vendor or that would be relevant within the network, and that collaborative mentality creates this national network. And then the last bit is engaged and enthusiastic, of course, wanting to be a part of this network and it feeling right for you and beneficial to you. So we're with the monthly meetings plus outside meeting time, and especially thinking about the in-person summit in Keene, we're saying 3 to 4 hours per month of staff time. and have identified representatives that would want to join.
So we see this as mutually beneficial, that we learn from each other and share from each other. Stacy Strauss, who is the executive director at the Ohio University Innovation Center, kind of put this beautifully, because it's not only a way to work together organizationally, but it's really a way to bring better services to the entrepreneurs that we support. So we see it as a way of multiplying and accelerating your own organization's opportunities for entrepreneurs in your local community. There are 3 real benefits that come from partnership at this time. Access to the resources, that will be via shared platform and development. That is a part of our thing to launch this fall. The connection to other expert practitioners. We have both these structured conversations and Slack conversations. It is a delight to get to have conversations with each other and cheer each other on. I think that's one of the secret sauce parts of Radically Rural as a whole, is the idea that so many of us do our work in isolation or fairly lonely. And it's pretty fun to hear other people climbing the same mountain, if you live in a mountainous place, or walking across the same plane, or you get the idea, moving through space in the same way. We just had a partner meeting this morning, and we're catching up on the 12 companies that we are collectively incubating and moving along, and is so exciting because these things are slow, right? Biotech is slow. It requires patient capital, all that. And yet in 6 months' time, we can mark significant progress. I think by the end of the conversation, we had for 10 of 12 in terms of counting for SBA standards, and probably for 12 of 12 that we saw movement. It just might not have been movement that was kind of counted in the SBA world. And then opportunity to attend the Radically Rural Summit. We convene the partners in person the day before to have some conversation about the network, and then we have them stay throughout the summit. One small correction, because probably Juliana and Lillian were a little bit like dying. There's not going to be a whole biotech track. There is simply going to be a biotech session that is a part of one of the tracks. They're excited to grow, but you will know that having multiple tracks running in a conference is a big challenge. So we will be subsumed in the entrepreneurship track, although we welcome everybody from every other track out there.
Session.
Thank you. Yes, exactly, session. So we will be excited about that. And I will also say that there is something about meeting in person that is really quite special and not always available to all of us. So it's a nice thing. We do provide a travel stipend in these formation years so that can be possible. So that's our whole made for you presentation, because as we talked about at the beginning, this is a roundtable and we really want to hear from all of you. And looking at that poll, I think all of you are going to have a lot of things to discuss. We will first entertain questions from you, and then if you don't have enough questions, if your curiosity is a little bit like, well, I should still, we have a whole bunch of questions pre-made to try to engage and learn from all of you, because we will never pass up an opportunity to learn from others in the rural space. And I think in order to enable this to work best, I'm going to stop sharing for a minute so that we can just see people on the screen. And if you want to use the reactions button to indicate a raised hand, or if you just want to blurt out something, just take your self off mute and blurt it out. So first, just any questions from any of you about what Radically Rural Biotech is about and what the opportunity is to become a partner in this formation phase.
Is there a potential possible date or location for the conference, or did I miss that?
Great question. I will let Juliana and Lillian. There is absolutely a date for the conference, and yeah.
Yes, it is September 25th and 26th in 2024, and that's a Wednesday and Thursday.
And
And just to be clear, Earl, the conference is Radically Rural, the whole of Radically Rural, and you might have missed the introduction, which talked about the various tracks, and biotech will be a session on the entrepreneurship track.
Where's it going to be?
Keene, New Hampshire. Keene, New Hampshire. And this is our 7th year of the summit. And as I mentioned in the beginning, there are 7 primary areas of focus or tracks, but there's lots of opportunities to basically you just pick which sessions you want to go. We have amazing plenary sessions. There's art, there's culture, there's activities, there's immersive experiences. We have an amazing evening networking event called Connect the evening of the first day, where folks get together to do just that with really good local food. We have an after party where we all get to chat and dance and listen to music and have fun. It's just a really good immersive experience. And what I love about it is that people really leave energized and inspired and with connections and resources and hard skills to do their work. And we also love that the venues are kind of spread throughout the main part of our downtown. So you're not stuck in like a little, air-conditioned hotel room for 2 days. You really get to walk around Keene in the fall time. So yeah, it's a really fantastic experience, and every voice that attends makes it better because it's very collaborative.
Okay, so I think any other questions? Because I have a few for you, and Earl, I might just make you the first one because I saw you're in the chat. And so one of our opening questions is, what is your role in the biotech ecosystem? And Earl, you're an interesting case because you work with SBIR applicants, right? Which is an important part of the funding stream. Often the SBIR part is the part non-attached to universities. So we're talking about different kinds of entrepreneurs, but you are located in Los Angeles. So tell us a little bit about your connection to rural biotech entrepreneurs, if you've had that opportunity yet.
I've worked in a lot of SBIR projects with the Department of Agriculture, NIH, NSF, DOE, everyone across the board. And I've worked with people of many states. I'm also actually involved in state agencies and programs in Pennsylvania, Nebraska, Texas, and a few other locations. Basically, my business model is I help people figure out what they need to do, what grants are out there, identify them, and help them get started in that process. There may or may not be consulting, there may or may not be smart programs that would help in that part of it, but there's also the TABA funding on the back end, which is the Technical Assistance in Business Administration Fund, and that is something that I'm willing to take risk on the front end and have lower costs in order to get the TABA funding on the back end, if that's the financial model that works. But I have done a number of agricultural projects recently with the Department of Agriculture, and my wife's family are all farmers in Nebraska.
There you go. Nebraska has been a long partner of ours at Radically Rural at the upper level, and Nebraska is one of the places that is really doing some really interesting things in ag biotech. So thank you for being here, and that is really exciting to hear.
If I can interject, part of the challenge is that the SBIR money is going to the coasts, the East Coast, along some states along the South, Texas, and a few others, and then the West Coast. Nebraska has recently discovered SBIRs, and they're starting to get a little bit more aggressive about that. But there's a lot of states, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, and other places that just have no interest in doing it. And it's very difficult to convince the powers that be. Kentucky and Tennessee, by the way, are very big in this. And they also offer matching funds for companies that want to relocate there.
So you're naming some really important parts about policy and state legislative structure. And that's one of the things that we are definitely learning inside this network and that's why we're excited about having two of the founding partners to be public-private partnerships, because they bring a different model than a university connected or than the independent ESOs like Hannah Grimes and Kentucky Inventors. I'm curious in this group. Thank you. I will just also say that Earl is a perfect example of someone that doesn't meet our qualifications for a partner at this, because he's not an ESO, he's a private service provider. But we are talking about affiliate partners and resources coming online in 2025. And so, Earl, you are, as always in the innovation space, like you're one of those people that is on the leading edge, and that's really exciting. And we will definitely stay in touch with you because we like to identify resources and possible affiliate partners now. I have a question for the whole group. We're not going to do a poll, but I would love to hear some people thinking about it. It looks like a few of you are from trade, like the state level bio associations. At least a couple of you are. I'm curious about whether or not you think our hypothesis is true, that we can recreate what urban hubs have in terms of density and connections with a rural biotech network. If you think that hypothesis is true, or if you're like, I'm willing to entertain it, but I'm not exactly sure, or I have my skepticism. We love to hear.
And I'll say hi to Maria and Lisa. I know we emailed, so I'm happy to see you here, maybe hear from you.
I was waiting
Great.
for the name call out. I don't know yet. We work quite a bit in our rural community across Georgia, particularly on workforce development. We have for over 10 years now, with state funding for 5 of that. I think I got to see how it progresses, honestly. Yeah, it's just different, and we have lots of different pockets, and all of our rural communities have their own priorities and economic development priorities, I would say, and workforce priorities, and it's there's always politics. So we'll see how this
So Maria,
progresses.
could you say, since you and Angela have had the benefit of cross chat, but could you re-announce what organization you represent? Yeah. Sure.
Maria Thacker, I'm president CEO of Georgia Bio. We're the bio affiliate and have been affiliate in Georgia. We're based in Atlanta, but we're definitely statewide. We have the only life sciences institute in the Southeast. We've been doing that for over 15 years and doing workforce development. And that's where a lot of our rural outreach has predominantly reached. Additionally, the metro area is extremely spread out. We're one of the more spread out cities in the country, so I can drive an hour in any direction. I'm technically in metro Atlanta, though I would say those last 20 minutes in many areas are considered rural by definition. So we do a fair bit of work in that area, in some areas that are Atlanta, but not heart of Atlanta. I think it depends. I really think we'll see how this progresses. I think it's an intriguing concept to see how a network can help that. I don't know. It's always complicated in every region. And then culturally, you add cultural differences on things. It can be an adventure.
Yeah, no, I think that there's definitely, I really welcome that comment. It's true on a lot of dimensions. I mean, you're naming sort of the space dimension and the geography, and when you're talking about workforce and those kinds of things, there are geographic limits, even given remote work and all of that kind of stuff. There are some things that are just geographically limited. Then I also think for those of us that are located in rural and live our lives in rural, the community level is really important. And we do consider those cultures to be sacred almost, right? And so everyone confronted with a statewide initiative when in a state as diverse as a state like Georgia, I think confront some of the challenges that you confront. I think for those of us that are in states that are more homogenous, in terms of their community structure, that becomes
Yeah.
less of a problem.
Yeah,
right?
we run into a lot of issues, and this is even in Atlanta proper. Just Atlanta's over 50% African American, and so we deal with a lot of, and frankly, Georgia is extremely diverse too. Our most diverse state is half urban, half rural. I mean, county is in Gwinnett, and I think Gwinnett actually is one of the more diverse counties in the country. So it's every time we go into any community, whether we're doing workforce or policy work, it's always a matter of building trust and having community leaders that live and work there in order to do anything and get anything done. Even if it comes to recruiting a company, having the right people there for the economic development meeting can be an adventure to pick and choose the 10 people in the room. And sometimes they don't always make sense, but it's just the way of navigating it. But I think there's a role biotech plays and life sciences plays in every community. And really workforce has been our most successful catch-all and has helped influence some of our other priorities around that, because particularly in our rural communities, finding jobs, especially where we've had communities where maybe a plant shut down, or over time, last couple of decades, opportunities for work have dissipated, if you would. And then young people wanting to get out of rural communities and into more urban communities are always, workforce seems to be that happy catch-all for us. So, and educating the communities on a very complex industry has been where a lot of our time is spent. And it's been successful. We have schools that now have biotech tracks in extremely rural communities. So, yeah.
Does anybody want to piggyback on that? Otherwise, I want to pick up on something Maria said and hook it to one of our other burning questions.
I was just going to say that the aspect of education is really fascinating in this. We've got a couple of sessions that are kind of percolating about rural education, and I'm going to think about that. And I may end up reaching out for questions or thoughts on how that goes.
I was gonna add, this doesn't directly the culturally different for anything, any area doesn't quite address this, but we've found that there are definitely state or local specific relevancies or services. And so we're immediately finding that within our founding partners, that sometimes it's like, oh, your state provides tax credits, ours don't. But still, those conversations I think have felt beneficial in just the comparison and realizing, oh, that's why it's harder here to do that, because you have that. Okay, how do we work around that? So those conversations have already come up that, yes, this network is across many boundaries and they don't always apply, but those conversations themselves have been interesting so far and still helpful.
Yeah, we're actually a community partner lead with a project, an NSF base, oh God, it's NSF grants, not base grants, different one, NSF Engines grant for medtech and wearables. And it's to create like a medtech wearable network in Georgia, basically. And at first Emory was like, we're just going to connect all the communities with med tech. And then they realized, okay, well, how are we going to approach the Black rural community versus the Black urban community? And then there's Latino community that are age 40 and up versus thing. And so we've been having to do a lot of education around all of that, because we can't even get someone to respond to our email, even if we're offering money, like stipends and all that type of stuff. So now we've officially come down as of Monday to a focus area around wearables for maternal and child health in rural Georgia, because they realize they can't just like say diagnostics are wonderful, let's all do something together, and they couldn't come to a decision. It took them 5 months to get to that, but they eventually listened to me and my team, where we were like, you can't do this, like you got to pick something immeasurable to work on, guys. So yeah, and since Georgia has the worst Black woman health maternity demographics, that was an easy one to pick. So yep.
Lisa, you look like you were about to add something from Oregon Bio. Were you, or are you ready for me to jump on and pick up on something Maria said and take us in a slightly different direction?
I'll just really quickly, I mean, I would concur, right? I think the jury is still out. I think she had to drop off, but we were just having a conversation with the economic development person at one of our counties about 2 weeks ago, and trying to figure out, how we could talk to the rural communities about the biotech opportunity. And you guys mentioned at the beginning, I think, extraction versus generation. And I've, in that conversation a couple weeks ago, that was sort of what we were thinking, like, okay, there's jobs in these rural centers that are not too far from some of these, or rural or sort of urban, semi-urban centers maybe, right, that are not too far from some of these rural areas. So how could we talk about the ability to drive 45, 50 minutes for some of these jobs? But we hadn't really been thinking generatively, and so that's why I wanted to join today. And I think she had to drop off, the woman from Lane County, but I think today is going to help inform those conversations as we go forward.
Oh my gosh, you couldn't have set the stage better for the question that I was going to. So this is a 1-2 punch from the state bio group. The next question I was pointing to is your philosophy of economic development. And we use this shorthand. It's not perfect. It's not our shorthand. We borrowed it from some economic development folks that were writing, I think about 10 or 15 years ago, about the difference between economic hunting and economic gardening. Economic hunting being the idea that you're trying to attract an existing business or sector into your community. Economic gardening mean you're trying to grow it there yourselves. And of course, there's some combination thereof. Sometimes you start with economic hunting, and that gives you an anchor business that then might yield some economic gardening. But I'm curious about how that philosophy lands for all of you, and whether you consider yourself more in the economic hunting business or the economic gardening business, or a little bit of both, and when you apply each.
I can chat for a minute. I'm so sorry. My name is Stephanie Keener. I am in what would be considered a Central Virginia region, but along the edge of the Blue Ridge in Lynchburg, Virginia. We have 5 institutions of higher education in our region. Our small city of about 80,000 is surrounded by a largely rural region, but historically we've had a lot of pharmaceuticals and particularly nuclear industry in our region, with 2 large international firms, BWXT and Framatome. We have a lot of leadership in nuclear medicine coming out of those companies. And traditionally, we have certainly been economic hunters, but we have just received funding to create a new Center for Entrepreneurship that's working alongside our SBDC, which is why I'm also the SBDC director. But we are really working on the gardening aspect and are not really sure in our community how to make sure we're creating that pipeline. We have this amazing workforce from those historic pharmaceutical industries and our nuclear industry, but we do not know, we don't have a good way to trap, and I mean that in sort of a joking way, but how do we keep those amazing entrepreneurs in our community as they are ready to start their own businesses, doing work in the biosciences. So we're here for all the partnerships. We're kind of new at this, but we would love to be on every roundtable you have to continue to learn how to garden.
I see a couple that are both. Yeah, go ahead, Earl.
One of the things is that if you're located near an important university like Virginia Tech and other places, you can attract people and you can attract business. Bozeman, Montana is in the middle of nowhere, but Montana State is one of the top laser research and startup areas in the country because that's where they focused on. They created a group of people, and suddenly it just grew from there. But I mean, anything connected with that is going to be of interest, because you'll have intelligent people, you have the people that can do this stuff all sitting around and eager to do it. So the university being nearby is probably one of the key areas.
Yes,
Virginia Tech is a couple of hours away from us. Our 5 institutions of higher education are three small liberal arts colleges, a smaller private Christian university, and then our community colleges and our medical science colleges. I just, we do have some relationships with Virginia Tech, but I do know that largely when we say, oh, we're in Virginia, people think, oh, you must have connectivity to Tech, or you must have connectivity to UVA. And I'm not saying that we don't, but that is not the path of connectivity that we have in our back door.
You're naming an
Sorry.
interesting point, Earl, and both of you are kind of landing on, which was another part of our question, is about what assets do you think your community or region has that make biotech an opportunity that you think could be gardened or could be hunted? And I think you're naming one of them, which is university assets of any school assets of any kind can be really important. Hannah Grimes, for example, has Keene State and a community college, both of whom have had long medical, nursing programs and other health-related programs, which make bioscience and physical resources in the forms of laboratories that can be used by companies in early stages of startup. I'm curious. So I see Danielle, economic gardening for you, and the Innovation Center. I think that's in Missouri, Kansas, somewhere in the middle part of the United States, correct?
Missouri. We're in
Missouri.
Independence, Missouri.
Okay. And so tell us about like your assets or what you think is happening in your world part that makes biotech live for you.
So 13 years ago, the city of Independence and the Independence School District and the Economic Development Council partnered to create this incubator, and we went into an old hospital. And so we're pretty unique in our incubator because we have bio level safety 1 labs, we have tech labs, we also have commercial kitchens. And so my predecessors did a really good job building up our food programs, but they were putting food businesses in these labs. And so when I was hired, the board really wanted to try to put more science, life sciences and tech innovation in the incubator. And so phase 1 for me has just been, no one even knew we had these labs. And we also have $100,000 worth of lab equipment available for our clients here in these spaces. So, I mean, of course, we're here to help startups in the science space. Our most unique situation so far is we have a breast milk bank in one of our labs. So that was really interesting getting that up and running with the business owner. But I'm here to learn as well. So I come from tech, not from life sciences. But we're a little bit unique because we're half suburban, half rural. We definitely have a lot of farms here in our town, and then of course all the surrounding areas are rural. But we also touch Kansas City, so we're a unique blend of everything. We do a lot of partnerships with UMKC, K-State, KU, MU. When they all found out we had these labs, they wanted to use them. And I said, no, these are for entrepreneurs and startups. So anyway, that's my story. But yeah.
That's really interesting. Other people want to name some of the assets that you've got. And then I'm also just curious about that 8%. Before we get off the phone, I feel like I want to hear from that 8% that said none of the above. Like if you answered that at the beginning of our poll, I'm so curious. You had a reason for coming. I know you didn't accidentally sign up for this, so I'd love to know about why you're here. And I'm looking at some names that I can't tell from I haven't been able to read all the way through the chat. So there we go. Others, can you share? Like, I'm loving the woman that's got the Rural Teacher Training Initiative as part of her. Tell us about what brought you to this conversation. Yeah.
Hey, I actually work for Maria. So we're in Georgia.
Great. Okay.
And the Rural Teacher Training Initiative, we are doing hands-on biotech labs with middle and high school teachers from across the state. Any science course, so showing them how they can plug that in. So even if they're teaching physics, where they can put in some biotech, and we bring in industry speakers so they're able to see what industry is available in Georgia and show their students what is out there, and they know their students best and can say, hey, maybe you should pursue a career in this lab science.
That's really exciting. I know for all rural communities, because Juliana, as Juliana was saying, like injecting some opportunities into the curriculum that aren't necessarily available to you when you've got a small school, So how long have you guys been doing that?
This is our 5th year of our
Okay.
TTI. Yeah.
And so how the payoff line for that, this is one of the things that I think is really interesting. I heard you say 13 years ago, somebody said 13. Was that you, Danielle, that said 13 years ago? Or that was no.
Yeah, Danielle.
Yeah. So, like these seeds that we plant sometimes take a long time on the gardening side, right? It takes a long time to grow into a full-blown plant. So I'm just curious, what are the early returns for you in the educational pipeline side of things?
We have definitely seen an uptick in just beginning the teachers having the education to even know what these things are, to know to ask for them. So a lot of these principals have extra pots of money, and when they say, hey, I'd like a class set of micropipettes, there might actually be money for that. They just didn't know to ask for it before. So then they have all of these new ways that they can use those things with their students. And if it's just building interest with them and getting them to understand that they can be scientists, it's not scary, it's not elite, it's for everybody.
Fabulous.
I think from a policy perspective, in terms of planting future gardens, if you will, it's also allowed us, quite frankly, to take our policy works a lot further and build relationships with policymakers, particularly here, that in a place where a lot of the money goes into our urban areas like Atlanta, Albany, or Augusta, or Athens. We're able to show, if you put money into us, we're able to put it into the rural communities. And a lot of our rural leaders tend to sit in seats of power because they've been there quite a bit. So it's kind of allowed us to provide influence and open doors to have other conversations, which can be harder for our industry. I will say the other impact it's had for us is working with local municipalities on exploring some of our counties have their own foundations, exploring a couple of cities working together, or a couple of counties working together to do focused teacher trainings for their schools through their local economic development authorities, or helping get the pathway introduced to other communities, also helping support the technical college systems biotech pathway. And another economic development impact has been our med tech sector is growing quite rapidly, but an interest in doing med tech trainings as well, not just biotech for manufacturing. So
cool. I'm seeing a lot of good chat going on, and I think people are connecting. So I'm excited about that. I know that Juliana is always like, okay, we wrap this at a certain time. And I'm scrolling through the chat and seeing all of these different types of organizations represented. And I just want to make sure if there's anybody that had a different thing that they wanted to talk about, or they hoped we would talk about, and this was sort of a surprise, I'd love to know what you came to talk about, and see if we can at least point you in the right direction or be responsive about that, because it might not have been at the center of our conversation, but it could be really interesting. And I saw Beatrice come off mute, so I'm going to guess that you might have something, Beatrice.
Yeah, I do. So I'm Beatrice McQueen. I live in the Ozark in north central Arkansas. I'm actually new to the Ozarks. I work for a company that was started in New Haven, Connecticut, that was a spin-out from Yale University. And I have been in the Bay Area in California, both North and Southern California, for the majority of my adult life. And I work for all the large biopharmaceutical companies. So I'm very technically trained, and I have an entrepreneur. I am a chief operating company for a biotech company developing drugs, that is in the clinical stage. And I moved to Arkansas because we have wanted to leave the metro and suburban area and wanted to be back in the rural area. My husband's family was originally from Kentucky, and we're really back here and actually farming. And so my husband is a cattle rancher, and we do all the farm stuff while I, work remotely from here. One of the things that I think is that all the towns, towns are from everywhere. All the big universities in the area. You have great universities here in Alabama and Georgia. Tennessee, Missouri, Ohio. I mean, people are smart and they go to universities, but they look for jobs elsewhere. I am sure many of the working adults in the Bay Area or in the Boston, Massachusetts area and in San Francisco, they are. It's not because they don't want to leave where they are now. They just didn't think that there are jobs. Now, certainly the COVID situation helped where a lot of people are able to work remotely. And in the biotech industry now, at least in biopharmaceutical, you absolutely, for many companies, you can work remotely because not every company uses their own laboratories and do stuff, actually there we use a lot of things are outsourced to specialty companies that are in different parts of the country or outside of the US. So as far as brain power goes, you really can't have them everywhere, especially in rural area. I'm absolutely sure a lot of people, while it may still be a new idea for them, when they hear me moving back here to the rural area, they were all sort of shocked, but at the same time, I know they're envious where I could have come home and I'm home, from a 160-acre farm and work every day. And I said, like, you go camping, I'm camping every day, kind of a scenario. I think that it will be important to help figure out how to get venture capitals and companies with ideas or founders with ideas to think of channeling to find work, to build companies here, whether it's headquarter or you just hire from these areas so that they know that there are jobs that they could live here and work for companies from anywhere. Certainly best if it's headquartered in the rural communities. And then on a slightly different angle, my community here is really we're an extremely small town with a little over 1,000 people, and the county and the town, of course, is in the traditional type of rural agricultural cattle kind of industry, and they are looking for ways to improve their economics. Now, I think we have a very good school, and I think kids should really be encouraged to. I think earlier there's a conversation mentioned like have funds for pipettes and understanding science is nothing, it's cool, it's nothing scary, it's not unattainable, and being able to really start feeding the younger people and have them really be interested in science and teach them that there are certainly a lot of jobs that they could have in science and biotech, and really encourage them to go in that direction, and that they don't have to leave their hometown or their home state in the future because we can have an industry here. I think that would be great, and I will be very interested in spending energy to help build this because I have a lot of experience growing companies from the very bottom up, and I love to be able to see that in the rural community.
Thank you. That was a lot. And you just represented, I think, a really interesting, we talked about economic gardening and economic hunting. We didn't talk about sort of post-COVID economic development, which is a whole different kettle of fish, but you have just named exactly the path that many are on, and I think is, to some extent, the hope just a reimagining of how our population distributes itself across the country. And I think that there are many that are coming to rural and finding that to be their sweet place. And then before we go, Anna, I think you came on screen, so it feels like to me that maybe you were going to jump right in there and offer one more thing, and then we'll close it up.
Yeah, I did come off just to say thank you for this opportunity to learn and listen to all these folks from all over the country. I live in a small town right outside Concord, New Hampshire, so local to Radically Rural, and excited to have that as a resource. I wanted to just say I really appreciate the discussion around the economic gardening and economic hunting. We're, a small town with not a lot of resources. There are very different opinions in our town about what is the most appropriate way to go about economic development in a small town. And I guess I feel like we have to do some gardening before we can go hunting, because we don't right now have like the sewer and water infrastructure to actually lure, larger businesses to come and physically locate in our community, which is what a lot of folks are hoping happens here in our town. But I think the other piece of it, why I was interested in this biotech in particular, is because of our proximity to Manchester and the designation as a regional tech hub, as the BioRegen Valley. And I don't know how we can tap into that, but I would love to think that there is a way that we can. So that's just another thing that it's kind of percolating for me and my mind. So that's really all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I wasn't sure if Tasmira had your hand up. It went away, so I wasn't sure if it was up for.
Oh, good. I'm sorry I didn't see that, because I was going to thank Tasmir for enduring with having to have multiple attendees. So
yes, maybe it was the kiddos raising the hand, or maybe you had something to weigh in.
It was me raising my hand, but then I had, my baby started crying, so I had to take it down. But I just wanted to add to the conversation that I come from more of an urban planning, commercial revitalization background. So I've been leveraging Main Street business improvement districts as a way to help to do a little bit of the harvesting and then the gardening of like developing more robust retail mix. Because during COVID, a lot of them struggled a lot with maintaining their residents or attractions and things like that, because they lost a lot of the population to more rural areas.
I think that's a really important thing to close on, because that in a certain way, although, there isn't much retail biotech per se, all of these companies depend on those Main Street businesses for quality of life. And so back to your point, Anna, that kind of connects this whole idea that the ecosystem is not just in any particular sector. There is a need for these surrounding and supporting businesses to provide quality of life for the workforce and the other. So Tasmir, you're doing work that is very close to our heart in terms of the Main Street redevelopment. I think that anyone that is in rural America spends a good portion of their time thinking about how to do that. So thank you, Angela, for seeing that hand. And it's making me laugh so hard because your child's head has now disappeared into the skyline. We managed to decapitate the poor kid in the course of this conversation. So that's very wonderful. I want to say thank you. We put the last slide up about contacting us. Angela dropped it into the chat as well. And I think we will turn it back over to Juliana and Lillian for a final word. But thank you so much for staying with us for the whole hour. We really appreciate that. And I really appreciate how many of you jumped in to have something to the conversation. And for those of you that couldn't participate, keep the conversation going with us via email or otherwise. We would love to hear from you. We are stimulated by what you offer.
That's a good enough closing. Thank you all for being here on behalf of the Hannah Grimes Center for Entrepreneurship and Radically Rural. And we hope to see you in future conversations and maybe in person at the summit here in Keene. You won't regret it, I promise. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.